Okay, welcome back to this episode of Person Selling Weekly. And today we will bring up a topic around culture, because I think that's almost always coming up when I do training around the world. And I think I have myself, of course, had a lot of exposure to different cultures because I have been doing training again here in US, all over Europe, in the Far East. And again, what I see is that when I travel around the world, humans tend to be much more alike than different. And this whole theme reminds me of an experience I had many years back when I was a Nordic sales and marketing manager in a diagnostic company. And one of my managers there from Sweden said that, wow, I had been at this fantastic workshop where I was introduced to the cultural differences between the Nordic countries. And I would really like to inspire our salespeople to really understand the difference, because I think if we understand the cultural differences, we can really work much better together. And I said, okay, well, why not? Let her do that. So at our next sales meeting, she got 1 hour to basically introduce these differences between Swedes, Norwegians, Finns, and Danes. And actually it was quite funny. But again, highlighting those differences didn't really promote a better cooperation between our employees from the different countries, because what I could see was that for the coming 3 days, everyone was teasing each other with, but that's also just because you're Norwegian that you say this, or typical Danish, or wow, Swedes never make a decision, they always have to be in consensus with everyone. So actually, bringing those, highlighting those differences, actually in a way sabotaged what she wanted to accomplish by sharing this information. So today we'll talk a little about how to actually be aware of cultural differences, but not let it sabotage how you work with your customers in different cultures. The most common question I get when I train salespeople around the world is that, so how do we adjust for cultural differences when we use the satisfaction selling method? And again here, of course there are differences. So I think in some cultures you can be more direct. In other cultures you need to be a little more, subtle in the way you go about interacting with people. In some cultures you need to understand that you need to build a relation before you talk business. In other cultures, you need, in a way, to create business before you can expect to build a relationship. But again, there, I see that most people put far too much energy into that question. What I want you to do is much more focus on the person in front of you, and then tune in on that person. Because, for instance, if you work in the Far East, in China, I've done a lot of training in Hong Kong, and out there, you meet people who are what they call banana. So they're yellow on the outside, but white on the inside. Because maybe that person who's in front of you have been studying, in UK for 7-8 years. So you run the risk of treating them differently than they actually are. So again here, in the personal selling and in our satisfaction selling method, we are much more eager to actually observe and interact with the person in front of us instead of acting with a cultural stereotype. Because I think, again, that can often, again, lead to really bad situations and unproductive meetings. Some years ago, I was running a training for a global sales force, and we did the training here in Denmark. And in that team, there was people who was handling the US market. There was people in that team who handled different markets in all over Europe. And of course, also they had a person responsible for China. And after this 7 days program, he came to me and said, in a very polite way, say, wow, Henrik, I really like what you have been teaching us, but I don't think I can actually apply it in China, because, when I meet with professors in big Chinese universities, they don't have time for answering all these questions. They just want me to go and help them with what they find is important. So I get 15 minutes, and then I just have to tell them this is the solution, and then I have to get out of there. And my response to that was, okay, again, you know your customers better than me, so I don't want to argue with you about that. Then 1 year later, I met with the exactly same group again, and the sales director came to me before those 2 follow-up days training and said, my salesperson in China, he have a case he would like to share with you where he actually applied the satisfaction selling method. So at the beginning of these 2 days, I approached him and said, wow, I hear that you have some experience now using the satisfaction selling. And then he got quiet for a short moment. Said, yes, actually, Henrik, I had this very big opportunity and it moved nowhere, and we were risking to actually lose this opportunity to one of our competitors. So I basically said, okay, I have nothing to lose. So I went in, started the meeting with a yes set. And then I asked him some PS plus question about, okay, well, what is it that they have currently had success with in using laser in their studies? And I asked him about his dreams and his aspirations. And to my surprise, he responded very well. And what I thought would have been a 15-20 minutes meeting turned out to be a 2.5-hour meeting where he basically shared everything with me. So Henrik, I think I have to reconsider. Maybe we can use this in China. And again, personally, I'm not surprised, because even a Chinese professor is a human being. And if you go in and ask curious questions about what they do well and what they really want, if you really show an interest in what is important to that person, they will open up, they will share. So of course the satisfaction selling method also worked for him in that situation. And I think from that day, he got a little more curious. He got a little more faith in the method, and started to, of course, again, become much more successful in the way he interacted with his customers. So again, knowing the person and acting with the person in front of you was much more powerful than thinking he knew how to behave, because this is how you typically do in a culture. So how come that satisfaction selling go deeper than culture? I think it's because we basically tap into how human neurology actually works. And in satisfaction selling, the main idea is that we start where the problem isn't. So we give the person in front of us a chance to share their successes, to tell what they have done up until now that have actually created value. And when a person get a chance to share some successes, their strengths, it's very difficult not to move into an excitatory, open, positive state. And I think this happens for humans, for people, no matter where they are in the world. I think it's very difficult to stay closed and in a defense position if you talk about something positive. I think that's why it works. And then when you help them get clarity about where they want to go, wow, there's a lot of power in that for people, regardless of where they live in the world. So, and if a person knows where they are, they know where they want to go, then you build this energy in them that just make it very difficult for them to not want to move with you. And I think this is the reason why it works. It works because it taps into the neurology of the person you interact with, not the cultural imprint they have gotten after birth. So we go deeper than culture when we teach you how to interact with colleagues and customers and people around you. So again here, so you could ask yourself, so what risk are there if we focus too much on the culture and the differences? And I think every time you interact with other people, there is the risk that you in a way interact with the person you thought they would be in your mind. So you're actually not connecting to the person in front of you and what they're actually saying. And this is not only about culture. It could be that you have a customer, last time you met with him, he was really angry about something. And now you think about him as an angry customer. So even before you go into that next meeting, your system almost reacts as though now I'm going to meet an angry person. But how can you know that he's angry today? So I think the big trick is in a way to reset your own mind so that you meet people from a blank slate. So you actually meet them as the person they are today. And I think this is very powerful, because in a way you will be able to actually get much more out of your meeting. So instead of meeting the person you expected to meet, you will actually be able to meet the person who's in the meeting with you today. And I think this is what you get from really understanding the satisfaction selling method, and not getting lost in cultural differences and cultural imprint and all of that. Because again, even within cultures, there's very big differences and variation. So again, how can you know how a person will react just because they are from Germany or Denmark or Sweden or Japan or South America or US? You cannot. You need, in a way, for a short while to forget about that, to connect what's actually in front of you. So again, the last question you could ask yourself is, okay, but how do I practice this? And I think it's about saying to yourself before you go into the meeting, okay, I'm well prepared. I know my material, I know my product. And at the same time, it's very useful to say to yourself, I know nothing. Because you cannot know the future before it have happened. So having this idea of mentally going into the customer with a blank slate, a blank sheet of paper, can be very powerful, both in relation to what you're going to talk about, but also in relation to the person you're actually going to talk to. So say to yourself that, wow, I have met with this person maybe 2, 3, 5 times before. Wow, interesting who he will be today. So that in a way you can meet them with fresh eyes and open ears. That's what I would recommend. And if you do that again and again, I will promise you that people will enjoy meeting with you much more, because you're actually meeting with me as the person I am today, not the person I was 3 years ago, 2 months ago, or even 1 week ago. So basically give people a chance to be themselves in the meeting with you. And I think that's very appealing. And I think that would really promote you having high quality dialogues with customers. And I think that can only lead to success, both midterm and long term. So a final question for you to reflect upon until we meet again next week. So when have you last had a meeting where you showed up with a blank sheet of paper and where you were just curious about the person and how they were today? Because this is the kind of meeting I would like you to have many more of, not only the next week, but also the week after that. So think about that, and then I would look forward to see you again here next week. And again, if you like this episode, please go and like it and subscribe, so that you will be getting these small teasers and small bits of learning and experiences as the year unfolds. I will be happy to see you back here next week at next week's Personal Selling Weekly.